Yeah, thank you very much. And in giving some comments on this taking note session, the fundamental problems are that the distorted priorities of the government, and that combined with the government's inability to say no to the same distortions in its midst, means that there has not been any capacity for the Commonwealth Government to make any meaningful contribution to the battle on inflation. And the battle on inflation has been fought solely by the Reserve Bank of Australia, which has ratcheted up interest rates 13 times since the election. And they've been doing that in the teeth of the Commonwealth Government running a fiscal policy which is fundamentally inconsistent with the approach taken by the central bank. And when the Governor of the Reserve Bank was recently at Senate estimates, the question was put to the Governor, is the government running a contractionary, neutral or expansionary fiscal policy? And the Governor said that the government was running a neutral fiscal policy, when of course it should be running a contractionary fiscal policy. And we don't know how much longer the government will persist with this approach. But if it does persist with this neutral approach, it guarantees that there will be more interest rate rises, because the £8,000 gorilla in the Australian economy is the national government. And every time the Treasurer produces a budget, this Treasurer produces more spending. And that means that the interest rate pain will continue. And there is a table, the table of truth, in the budget papers which presents this in all its detail, and it presents the fact that the Treasurer is spending more money and taking new decisions to spend new money, which is making a bad situation with inflation worse. So the Australian people need a government that can run a contractionary fiscal stance. That is the thing that will aid the fight on inflation. And if the national government can run a contractionary fiscal policy, then the Reserve Bank and the government will be in sync. They will be in sync. And then there will be fewer interest rate rises, and there will be less pain at the kitchen table for the Australian people who don't want to pay higher interest rates. Australian people do not want to pay high interest rates on their houses. Prospective home buyers can't afford to pay high interest rates. This is stopping people getting into the housing market. Labor is stopping people, millennials and Gen Zs, from getting into the housing market because of their stupidly high inflation and high interest rates, which the Labor Party is responsible for, solely responsible for. And so that is the number one priority for this government, to take inflation seriously and to slow new spending. Now, I was reading the Canberra Times the other day, and it reliably informed me that there is 10,000 new public servants to be employed by the Commonwealth as a result of this latest budget, the biggest increase in 15 years. Now, this is just one example of expenditure by this government which is not necessary. We don't need more bureaucrats. We don't need more new people working in Canberra. And this is a good example of where the government could make some cuts, and it could be part of a contractionary fiscal stance. So as it stands, there appear to be few solutions on the government benches. Many solutions that have been developed by vested interests of the unions and the big super funds, and that is basically the policy manifesto of the modern Labor Party, a bunch of vested interests and a bunch of rent seekers. But sadly, none of these are solutions for inflation, which is the topic du jour. And therefore, we are, I think, stuck in this problem that the government has created for the Australian people. And that's why we are flagging different options that can be deployed to address these issues, particularly in relation to housing, where we do think that there is a very important debate to be had around helping first home buyers get into the housing market, but also ensuring that people who have a house can keep their house.